How much more embarrassing could it get than to have our own president make our armed forces tuck tail and run away from a bunch of 7th century Afghan goat-herders? In other words, was the Afghanistan debacle fulfilling a promise to China in return for their help in the 2020 election? Or was it simply stupidity, incompetence, senility, and poor planning that gave $80 billion worth of high-tech equipment to the Taliban and got out of the way for China to access Afghan lithium? Perhaps it's all of the above. Considering the mounting evidence of Biden's penchant for corruption, it's getting a lot easier to believe almost anything about him. And we'll consider, too, the left's large, rich, powerful, highly motivated, and ambitious benefactor, the Chinese Communist Party. It can be said that these elements are only the face of the movement that is dividing and seeking to destroy Western civilization in general, and America. Speaking of which, divide and conquer is a strategy that goes all the way back to Julius Caesar. And the better we as a nation understand that as one of the tactics our enemy is using, the more likely we'll come back together as one nation, under God, indivisible, and throw a middle finger at the driving force behind this divisive movement so, A, we don't get torn apart at the seams, and B, we maintain our traditional freedoms and standard of living. We didn't win World War II by being divided. We didn't become the most prosperous country in world history by using socialism, and we didn't succeed in establishing a strong, free, and independent nation by rewarding people who don't want to work, but by harnessing the creativity, energy, and enterprise of the American people. The whole country was not only united in the past, but worked together for years to defeat tyranny, and now we're going to have to defeat it again. Walking in lockstep with the cancel culturists is a much more sinister plot. However, and to quote Sun Tzu, all men can see these tactics whereby I conquer. But what none can see is the strategy out of which victory is evolved. Perhaps this reveals what's behind the Chinese strategy that is subtly taking bits and pieces of America without our even noticing it. Chinese spy balloons, buying up farmland in America, buying our politicians, investing in our corporations, learning in our universities, getting favored nation status, getting taxpayer-funded grants because they are an emerging nation, etc. Although using violence in their pursuit of some evil agenda, the left is quick to say violence doesn't solve anything. But as comedian Richard Genie once said,
It solved World War II.
And it may eventually have to come to that if the left doesn't stop trying to, as Obama put it, fundamentally transform the United States of America into something it has never been, was never intended to be, and something Americans don't want. But knowing the truth is crucial, not what the propagandists are using to re-educate and retool young Americans' way of thinking to groom them into a Marxist mentality and fool them into doing their bidding without them realizing it is the point herein. To understand more about this war on God and the America we've always loved, we have to deep dive into its nature and address what's unfolding under our very noses. We also need to recognize it and call it by a name nobody else is using so far. We're experiencing a communist insurgency, possibly sponsored or at least encouraged if not co-opted by elitist globalists. The actors noted above are obsessed with the total cancellation of our culture, the murder of as many Americans as possible by fentanyl. And they seek to control not only our political apparatus where power lives and laws are made, but our speech, our freedoms, our language, our farts, and even our emotions. In spite of deliberately arming Mexican drug cartels in the not-too-distant past, but also arming the Taliban with $80 billion worth of America's best high-tech military freebies. They want to disarm American citizens, not just by subverting the Second Amendment, taking away our guns one little restriction at a time, but also our individuality, freedom of thought, freedom of association, free exercise of religion, our God-given, unalienable rights, our private property, private businesses, and everything that made America, everything that is America. It seems the left wants to do to America what Harvey Weinstein did to actresses with his casting couch. More pointedly, they want to do to America what Iran pledged to do to Israel, i.e., to wipe us off the face of the map. But wait, among others, let's remember that China is in the lineup that wants to do that to America while smiling at our faces and patting us on the back. We take that as a friendly gesture. But in reality, they are just looking for the softest place to shove the knife. Speaking of socialism, the system dark forces are intent on forcing upon us. In a socialist society, people are not important, and individual liberties do not exist apart from what the government decides its people should have. And the typical totalitarian socialist government will never have a suggestion box. Also, there is nobody to which you can take a complaint as that which is provided in the First Amendment to our Constitution. People are expendable and exist only to serve the government collective. The only thing that is important, the only thing that must be fed, and whose influence must be allowed to grow in such a society is the government. Think about the medieval rat catcher who wanted to destroy all the rats in the Shire. He put food in a particular place that would attract a lot of rats. The rats came to eat there because it was easy. They didn't have to search it out or compete for it, and didn't have to fight for it. It was provided. One day the rat catcher put up one side of a wall not far from the food. It startled the rats. They worried for a short while about the wall because it was unusual. But since it was not much of a threat, and they could still see the free food, they went to eat anyway. The wall was only a temporary problem because the rats got used to it being there. Eventually, the rat catcher put up another side of the wall. The rats came to eat the free food, were startled by the extension of the wall. But they could see the food was there anyway and went to eat. As time went by, the rats got used to the two-sided wall and gorged themselves on the free food without any thought to the wall, which one day turned into a three-sided wall.